So I wanted to talk about action RPGs today. I wanted to talk about action RPGs because I wanted to specifically talk about the gameplay that's on screen right now, Final Fantasy 15. Now, the reason why I wanted to talk about action RPGs today is because Final Fantasy VII, the remake, is supposed to not have traditional turn-based combat in the game. And we all know that Final Fantasy 15 had a quote-unquote action RPG-esque style of combat. Now, I have some problems with it. I actually have a lot of problems with the combat in Final Fantasy 15, as well as just with the whole tone and the dynamic of the gameplay and the story, even though the story wasn't really that bad overall. Now, I just started to replay Final Fantasy 15 because I was very interested to learn what happened about, what happened in the game. So I looked it up on Wikipedia and I read the whole summarization of the plot. The plot seems pretty cool. It seemed pretty decent. I started to play the game again and I ran into the same problems that I had when I played the game. And the problems that I have with specifically an action RPG is that it's not very action oriented when it comes to the combat, to the gameplay, and even to just traversing the map. There's not a lot of action to it, and it has action in its name. Now, for starters, let's talk about the actual combat. I don't think it should be called an action RPG if I can still hold a button to traverse through the combat. I shouldn't have to hold O to get through the combat. That was a huge complaint in traditional turn-based RPGs, but because the characters actually move a lot more frequently instead of just hacking away at their swords like they did in maybe Final Fantasy VI, or very little movement in Final Fantasy VII, people are all ecstatic. Not me, because I personally don't think that you should be able to get away with just holding a button and having that be the representation of your combat. That's not me. That's just my opinion on the topic. Now, RPGs are supposed to draw you in. They either try and have a great story, or they fall on their face and their plot is very boring and minimal, but it is a very boring and minimal plot for 80 or 60 hours. I'm not saying that that's what's wrong with Final Fantasy 15 or what's going to be wrong with Final Fantasy 7. We all know how great both of the stories are, but what I am saying is that if the game cannot envelop you in the first 3, 4, 5, 10 hours of gameplay, it's going to be really, really hard for you to be able to get into that game, simply put, because it's so inconsumable. And you're supposed to be able to play the game for 30 hours, for 40 hours, for 50 hours, for 60 hours. That's a lot of time investment for a game that takes about 10 hours or 20 hours or 30 hours to be able to get to. I couldn't get into Trails of Cold Steel for maybe 20 to 30 hours. It took me 20 to 30 hours for me to really be able to say, oh, okay, I kind of like this game. And then the ending completely ruined the game for me. That's a huge problem with RPGs in general, and especially in action RPGs when their combat isn't very good. And I don't want this system to be transferred into Final Fantasy 17. Final Fantasy 7, excuse me. I don't want Final Fantasy 7 to have this horrible system where a lot of things take a lot slower than they should be, and a lot of things seem on rails. For instance, the car mechanics. I don't understand why the car is so deliberately handicapped and so on rails. It makes no sense. Why would Square Enix do something like that? And at first I understood, it's a relaxing moment. You get to spend time kind of listening to the conversations that Noctis, Prompto, and Ignis and Galio have in the car, but it's not worth it for me to spend like 2-3 minutes listening to just the car rove on and on and on. And really not get to my destination any faster or any more exciting. It's not exciting to, you know, sit in a car and listen to a conversation, unfortunately, in an action RPG. And the worst thing about the game, I feel like, the worst thing about it is when I was fighting the behemoth, which is one of the first monsters in the game that you kind of track down and fight, and it's a mini boss battle in its own right. And you literally have these droves of just following the behemoth back to its lair instead of just killing it outright. It makes no sense why you couldn't just kill it outright. And you had these long droves of just following it, and you could literally hear the audio track constantly replay over and over and over again. And I was just like, just get me to, you know, your lair so I can kill you. I have a huge problem with that. I have a huge problem with action RPGs in general, because usually they aren't actually action RPGs. They're usually carbon copies of traditional RPGs, except modified to a modern day aesthetic to deceive you as the consumer and as the player to be able to perceive these games as any different as they were 10 to 20 years ago. This has been 24. Remember to like, comment, favorite, and subscribe for more. Now, I don't know everything about Final Fantasy games. I haven't played every single one of them. I played 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 10, and now 15. That, you know, that's a lot of Final Fantasy games. But I played, you know, the Final Fantasy 10 the expansion X2. I've played a lot of Final Fantasy games, but I definitely don't know as much of Final Fantasy as some of you all may know. So I want you guys to post in the comment section below, do you honestly think that Final Fantasy VII is gonna be either better than it previously was, based off of just non-nostalgic, based on nostalgia, or will it be worse because of nostalgia? Because people have this, you know, conception of, all right, it used to be great, and now it's not necessarily as good because they changed some things that were key to the game, like the turn-based traditional combat. This has been 24. Have a fantastic day. I'll see you next time.